Filmmaking is a collaborative art form. Whilst the director controls the overall vision of the project, they work with other creatives in order to achieve their vision. From the set design, cinematography, the acting, and the movie's score. Because of this, many directors build up relationships with other creatives across their many projects. In particular, we see directors frequently collaborate with composers to craft the movie's score. Steven Spielberg has often collaborated with John Williams, Tim Burton with Danny Elfman, and Sergio Leone with Ennio Morricone. Whilst directors don't always work with the same composers each time, you can clearly see that directors will frequently try to work with someone they are familiar with. This can't always work out because of scheduling conflicts and other projects that take up too much time for the composer. Whilst a director may produce one film every 2 or 3 years, some will take much longer, but the composing of a film score will not take as long as crafting the entirety of a film from pre-production to the cinematic release. So, when a composer works with multiple directors as frequent collaborators, they will sometimes be forced to make a choice about which project to take on. This is what happened with director Christopher Nolan and composer Hans Zimmer. These two had collaborated on 6 films together over a 12-year period. Their first film together was Batman Begins in 2005, then the further collaborations of The Dark Knight, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, and ending with Dunkirk in 2017. Hans Zimmer was even nominated for the Academy Award for Best Achievement in Music Written for a Motion Picture for Inception, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. As I mentioned though, composers are able to work with multiple directors each year, and Hans Zimmer has also become a collaborator of director Denis Villeneuve on the film Blade Runner 2049. Both Nolan's final film with Zimmer and Villeneuve's first film with Zimmer were released in 2017. And at the rate the two directors made movies, their future projects were likely going to clash. Christopher Nolan had worked on his next project Tenet, which had a 2020 release date, and Denis Villeneuve was set to craft a new adaptation of Frank Herbert's novel Dune, and it was because of Villeneuve's work on Dune that ended the 12-year collaboration between Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer. Many people at the time when it was announced that Zimmer would choose to work on Dune over Christopher Nolan's next movie had assumed it was because the two had a falling out. However, this doesn't appear to be the case whatsoever. It is down to scheduling conflicts and Zimmer's eagerness to play in the sandbox of the Dune universe. Hans Zimmer has stated he is a lifelong fan of the Dune novels, having read the books as a teenager. Zimmer stated, "I read the book when I was a teenager, and Denis read the book when he was a teenager, and we talked a lot about that. One of the things that happened to both of us is rather than coming at this movie with the wisdom of years and the knowledge of having made lots of movies and all the baggage that you bring, it transported us back to being 13-year-old reckless boys who weren't afraid to try things, who weren't afraid to hold on to a shot, who weren't afraid to use provocative sounds and colours, and who weren't afraid to do things differently. That's a great strength of this film." Zimmer had also been so invested in the world of Dune that even after working on the first movie in 2020, he continued working on the music for Part 2 before the film went into production, and even started planning work on Dune Part 3, which will be titled Dune Messiah and adapt the second novel by Frank Herbert, only 2 days into the production of Dune Part 2. Hans Zimmer even went to win the Academy Award for his work on Dune Part 1. Zimmer clearly had so much passion about working on Dune and still does. Even after the controversy of being snubbed at the 97th Academy Awards for his score for Dune Part 2, he appears to be keen to return to work on Dune Messiah and hopefully get further recognition from the Academy. Despite the snub from the Academy Awards, Zimmer was able to win the Grammy for his work on Dune Part 2. Zimmer was disqualified from the 97th Academy Awards because his score for Dune Part 2 used more than 20% of the original score from Dune Part 1. This has obviously caused a great deal of disappointment for movie fans, but I believe it is clear that Hans Zimmer's score for the movie is excellent and will remain so without the recognition of the Academy. The collaboration between Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan may have ended, but there's no bad blood. Zimmer did state that he spoke with Nolan and told him he had to do Dune as it was a dream project of his, stating, "I have to do it and Chris understands I have to do it and he's going to be just fine." And Christopher Nolan has been fine. Whilst Tenet has seemingly been a disappointment to fans of the director, Nolan was able to go on to make Oppenheimer in 2023 and finally won the Academy Award for Best Picture and Best Director. With the end of the collaboration between Nolan and Zimmer, a new working relationship was formed between Christopher Nolan and composer Ludwig Göransson, who would go on to win the Academy Award for his work on the movie Oppenheimer. The collaboration between Göransson and Nolan came about because of Zimmer leaving Tenet to work on Dune, and now both composers won Academy Awards for their newer collaboration, so it appears to be a win-win for everyone. Göransson stepped in to compose the score for Tenet, and then Oppenheimer, and will also compose the score for Nolan's next movie, The Odyssey. Whilst it is a shame that Nolan and Zimmer may not collaborate together again, we certainly got some great music from their collaboration, as well as the work that they did after the collaboration has ended. These things happen in the movie industry. You collaborate with some artists until you are out of sync. Christopher Nolan worked with cinematographer Wally Pfister on the projects from Memento to The Dark Knight Rises. Their collaboration ended with Wally Pfister working on his directorial debut, Transcendence, which Nolan produced. This led to Nolan then working with a new cinematographer, Hoyte van Hoytema, who have now been collaborating since Interstellar through to Nolan's next project, The Odyssey. Even Denis Villeneuve had frequently collaborated with cinematographer Roger Deakins. Deakins had opted out of working on Dune because of his commitment to the Sam Mendes movie 1917. Deakins did express disappointment in not being able to work on Dune, but did go on to win his second Academy Award for his work on 1917. And his replacement on Dune Part 1, Greg Fraser, went on to win Best Cinematography at the Academy Awards for his work on the film. Seemingly, these new collaborations worked out for everyone involved. It is good for artists to collaborate with new people in order to evolve and develop new pieces of art, so the fact that we'll likely never see Hans Zimmer work with Christopher Nolan again is not a tragedy, but it will allow new and exciting pieces of art to be developed for us to enjoy in the future. I'm certainly very excited to hear what Ludwig Göransson will do with the score for The Odyssey, something which would not have happened had it not been for the novel written by Frank Herbert. I'm also keen to hear what Hans Zimmer is going to do with Dune Messiah and any other future projects that he may work on with new directors. I feel we're certainly in for a treat with what is still to come from Zimmer and many more years of work from composer Ludwig Göransson. Do you think it's a shame that Hans Zimmer will no longer work with Christopher Nolan because they've become out of sync? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and please click the bell icon to receive notifications for all of my future videos. That's it for now. Thanks for tuning in.